We see the headlines all the time, the flare-ups, the ceasefires, the seemingly endless cycle of violence in the Israel-Hamas conflict. And it's easy to ask, why? Why does this feel like a war that will simply never end? The real reasons go so much deeper than what we see on the news. So why doesn't this conflict end? You know, it's tempting to look for that one simple answer, that single person or event to blame. But the truth is, there isn't one. It's a dense, tangled web of history, of very real physical barriers, and of strategic political goals that all just feed into one another. So let's start pulling on those threads, one by one. To really get our heads around why this is so persistent, we have to go back. We have to start at the foundation, because the core issues here aren't new. They're rooted in these huge historical events that have shaped absolutely everything for everyone involved. There are two dates that are just absolutely critical to understand. First, 1948. This is the year of what Palestinians call the Nakba, which created a massive refugee population, and the burning question of their right to return. Then you have 1967, which marks the beginning of Israel's military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. These two events really set the stage for the physical and political realities we see today. And that word, Nakba, is so important. It's Arabic for catastrophe. And you have to understand this isn't just a distant historical memory. The demand for the right of return for those refugees and their descendants is a living, breathing political issue today. It makes compromise so incredibly difficult because it touches the very core of identity and the sense of justice for millions of people. Okay, so that historical foundation has led directly to the tangible, physical barriers that really define the conflict now. These aren't abstract ideas. They are the daily reality on the ground that creates a state of permanent deadlock. And this control plays out in two very different ways. In the West Bank, what you see is an ongoing occupation alongside the continuous expansion of Israeli settlements. These settlements physically carve up the land, making a viable, connected Palestinian state a kind of geographical puzzle. But then you have Gaza, and Gaza is a whole different reality. It's near total isolation, a blockade by land, sea, and air. Now, this blockade on Gaza, which Israel says is for its own security, has created a truly devastating cycle of despair. We're talking, according to the UN, a crippled economy, widespread poverty, and a constant humanitarian crisis. And when you have that profound sense of hopelessness, it creates the perfect breeding ground for extremism. It's how armed groups gain power, not just through fighting, but by providing the basic social services that a collapsed system simply can't. So we've got the historical wounds. We've got the physical deadlock. Now, let's add the fuel that keeps this fire burning. The incredibly complex world of politics, power, and strategy on all sides. You really can't understand the dynamics in Gaza without understanding Hamas. And the key is that they aren't just one thing. On one hand, they're the government, running the territory, providing services. On the other, they have a powerful military wing. And what this means is that for Hamas, military action is also a political tool. It's a way to demonstrate resistance and try to create leverage when it feels like all the diplomatic doors are closed. And the political pressures on leaders on both sides are just immense. For Israeli leadership, the number one priority is security, and hardline policies often appeal to a public that feels under threat. For Palestinian leadership, showing resistance against the occupation is absolutely crucial for their legitimacy. And on top of all that, both sides are dealing with their own internal divisions, whether it's fragile coalitions in Israel or the deep political split between Fatah and Hamas. All of it just weakens their ability to make big, risky compromises for peace. And make no mistake, this is not just a local conflict. It is constantly being fueled by outside powers. You have Iran and its allies supporting Hamas as a way to expand their own influence in the region. You have the United States providing critical military and diplomatic support to Israel, and other regional powers are always pursuing their own interests. This external support, the money, the weapons, the diplomatic cover, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire, allowing the fighting to go on and on. Okay, so let's put it all together. The reason this war feels unending really comes down to these three interlocking pieces. First, the historical crisis over land and refugees. Second, the institutional barriers of occupation and blockade. And third, the strategic incentives where violence becomes a political tool, fueled by both internal and international politics. The key thing is, none of these exist on their own. They all feed and reinforce one another, creating what feels like an unbreakable cycle. So, given this incredibly complex, self-reinforcing mess, is there any path forward at all? Well, the analysis does suggest a possible framework, but it also makes it very clear just how difficult this would be. The big idea is that you can't just fix one piece of this puzzle. Any real solution has to tackle all three core issues at the same time. It has to provide security guarantees for both Israelis and Palestinians, and that includes ending the Gaza blockade. It has to create political legitimacy with a just agreement on the big issues like refugees and land. And it absolutely must include a massive, internationally backed plan for economic recovery, especially in Gaza. Trying to do just one of these in isolation is pretty much doomed to fail. Ultimately, we're left with this really powerful thought. The current structure is locked in place. To break it, you would need something radically different, a way to share the pain and share future benefits. Without that, the structure of the unending war simply won't change. And the critical question that leaves us with is, how could a mechanism like that ever truly be built?